Good morning, folks. I'm Tom McLaughlin, and I'm here with Mark Guerringue, publisher. He's sitting in the left seat, and I'm on the right. This is Left and Right. It's October 23rd, Wednesday, and as always, much to discuss. So we have from our producer this question number one here, and it's a cold question for each of us. Do you feel that President Trump has improperly profited from his business ventures while in office? Want me to start?
Sure.
Improperly profited. Well, I guess that would seem to imply, has he used his influence as President of the United States to steer business toward his enterprises that they wouldn't otherwise have gotten? The only incident of that I can think of is perhaps this most recent one, where he was going to have a G7 meeting in one of his facilities in Florida, outside of Miami, I guess, and that he was doing it. His opponents jumped on it and said it's violating the Emoluments Clause in the Constitution, and then he withdrew it. It looked like his chief of staff, Mulvaney, I don't think handled it very well. I don't know what the deal was. Later, Trump said that he would have. He said, I would have given them to him for free. Well, I'm not sure that was his initial intention. If it was his initial intention, then he should perhaps have said that. You know, that didn't come out early in the process. And then there was some media reports that this particular one, I saw an aerial shot of it. It was an extensive facility, a resort looked like. Wasn't doing well. And on the books, they were losing money. And so that he didn't announce that I'm going to donate use of this property because I'm such a good guy, along with, taking my salary and donating it to whomever, which he does, and so he'll donate the use of this facility. Then that was a little, it seems like funny to me. It was an after-the-fact thing. I would have given it to them for free. That didn't sound like that was his real intent. So it looks like perhaps either he or his staff improperly were going to use this facility. And that's my best answer. That's the only evidence I have of him, maybe profiting.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that it was in Doral, Florida. I mean, this is one of those, if you're picking out 3 or 4 things he's going to be impeached on, the Emoluments Clause in the Constitution is going to be one of them. For sure. I mean, we know that everybody stays at his hotel in Washington, D.C. The Doral thing, and Mulvaney said something like, and I have it here for whatever reason, he says he's still, at the end of the day, this is Mulvaney, his chief of staff, at the end of the day, he still considers himself to be in the hospitality business. That's just explaining Trump in the way that Trump is in the hospitality business. That's Mulvaney explaining it to him. So not that he's president, but he's in the hospitality business, which is really at the core of everything that runs through Trump's behavior. It's self-serving. And I'm sure we're going to get into, what's happening in Ukraine, but it's all about self-serving. It's not about the country. So the idea with the Doral thing, it just seems obvious that you wouldn't do that if you're the president. You got a tremendous amount of pushback from everybody, Republicans and Democrats, and so he dropped that idea. The Washington Post did a piece where they came up with 2,500, never mind that it's kids, never mind that Ivanka gets the licenses from Chinese for her business, beauty accessory products, never mind that the boys are going to India and they're going to Jakarta and they're going to all these places setting up hotels for Trump empire, post Trump presidency, all that stuff is going on. But the Post came up with a list of 2,500 examples of this, of him abusing the presidency for his own personal gain. and I don't have 2,500 of them, but the latest one that I do remember was in early September when Vice President Pence went to Ireland. And he was on Dublin, I guess it's on the eastern side of Ireland, right? Mm-hmm. So Trump apparently has a big resort in the western part on the coast, somewhere there's a golf course or something. And so Pence made a trip. When he was there, he made a trip, a 2-day diversion to stay at his resort with Air Force Two and the whole contingency of security and all that the estimated cost taxpayers $600,000. So I think it's pretty clear he's abused it. He's abused that.
Okay, so they went from Dublin to the West Coast to where his golf resort
Yeah,
was.
stayed at his resort for 2 days and flew back for no reason.
2 days on the West Coast. So, do you know the purpose of the trip? I'm
Yeah,
not
there was
familiar with
no,
that one.
there wasn't. They were just they were. I don't even know if it wasn't. I don't remember the exact reason that Pence gave, but there was no major reason. He was in Ireland to do something, in Dublin to meet whatever he was doing on official business.
Assuming government officials, of Irish government officials that he would be meeting
Yeah.
with, right? Okay, so that they would tend to be in Dublin. 'Cause
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that I'm just making a quick point.
There's an
I don't-
airport in Dublin. There's an airport in Shannon, which is on the West Coast.
Right. So that's he
So I
probably
don't know which
flew
one
into
he
Shannon.
flew into.
He probably flew into Shannon. He's got Air Force Two, which is a big jet. So I'm sure he
Right.
went
He
there.
would have to be one of those, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that's the point, is that he stayed a couple of days. He took a little diversion to Trump's resort in the West Coast, and it cost taxpayers $600,000. And the Post came up with 2,500. That's one. I can't go 2,500
Yeah,
examples of him
yeah,
doing that. How many
yeah.
times do people stay at his hotel in Washington on Pennsylvania Avenue?
Well, if you it's convenient to the White House, and it's a
There's
nice
a lot of
little
hotels
hotel.
convenient to the White House.
Well, that one is the most convenient.
No, it's not the most convenient.
Isn't
it is
it
not the most
Isn't it the
convenient.
old one?
It's
that's
the
right
old
there
post
by the
office.
Treasury Department. Yeah,
It's the old post office. Well, the Willard Hotel's closer. There's a whole bunch.
That's the one I'm thinking of. So that's not the one he bought then.
No,
the
he
Willard
bought
Hotel,
what's called the old post office.
which is on Pennsylvania
It's on
Avenue.
Pennsylvania Avenue. It's kinda
further
like
away from the White House than
It's
the
a little,
Willard.
yeah. It's like midway down. It's like in back of one of the what they used to call the American
Oh,
Museum.
all right, I was confusing them, and
Yeah.
in my mind it was the Willard. Okay, so he bought a different one.
And I'm going to sneeze.
You're going to sneeze?
I'm going to sneeze. Bill, can
Well,
you?
if you sneeze, you sneeze.
No, I
So
think
what?
I'm done.
all
I think
right,
it's
yeah.
over. I talked myself out of it.
Oh.
All right, so that's that.
Okay.
So
yeah.
that's,
all right. So you during as you were explaining that, you said that Trump's as president, that I'm paraphrasing
Yeah.
what you said. As president, Trump, his first priority is himself and his business, and that his duties as president of the United States are secondary to that. That's
Right.
your opinion.
Yeah, and I think it blinds him. I think you've admitted to his narcissism.
I have.
And so I think it blinds him to, one is that he's just not a worldly person in terms of understanding geopolitics and history, right? We know that. He's just not. I mean, he just, we know that. So even when he doesn't know enough to, I'm sure we're going to talk about this, what William Taylor testified yesterday, and regarding Ukraine, and so that he is willing to sacrifice our national interests for his own election purposes by forcing Ukraine and the president of Ukraine to have what's called the quid pro quo deal of withholding $450 million worth of aid to Ukraine until Sadisky, wanted him to go publicly on CNN to say that the Ukrainian government was going to investigate Biden, and the old conspiracy theory from 2016, where Trump believes that it wasn't the Russians, it was the Ukrainians behind the election meddling in our country.
I have a lot of thoughts about that. That's a big basket.
Did you read the William Taylor testimony?
Well, please understand that the William Taylor testimony was given supposedly in secret.
Yeah.
So what we know about the William Taylor testimony is only what Democrats on the committee chose to leak
Yeah,
to
saw
the media.
The 15 pages. Did you read the 15-page opening statement? It's online.
Okay, so that was not part of the private testimony.
Right.
I didn't read all 15
Right.
pages, but I
Right.
read a synopsis.
Right. So it's pretty clear. And William Taylor, and I know that when we've had these discussions before, it's always the deep state, Jim Comey or Mueller, they're secret Democrats, or it's the deep state. But William Taylor, who's a West Point graduate, Vietnam veteran, 50 years experience in foreign service. He's the Ukrainian guy, and he was just recently, right, within the last year, called by Pompeo himself to go to Ukraine. So I guess my first question is, are you challenging William Taylor's testimony?
The synopsis I read indicated that Trump wanted the Ukrainian government to investigate the DNC.
And Biden.
Mostly the DNC.
No, it's not. I mean, it says both.
Yes.
It's the company that Biden's son worked for, and the DNC, about that old conspiracy theory.
Okay. Yes, about the conspiracy theory, because William Barr has an investigation going on, hired John Durham as the special prosecutor. It started off as an inquiry. It's turned into a criminal investigation now with a grand jury, and they're subpoenaing witnesses, including Brennan and Clapper, and recently, and that Ukraine is involved in that from 2016 because Manafort was involved with Ukraine, and so was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, whose name will come to me, and his brother, also involved with Ukraine, and both of them making lots of money, and so there's a lot we don't know about regarding all that in 2016 that I think is a legitimate inquiry. That is the stuff that John Durham is going after. And sometimes William Barr accompanies him to Australia, to Italy.
To chase down the conspiracies.
Not to Ukraine.
To chase down the conspiracies. But that, you're taking your eye off the ball, Tom. So we're not talking about Manafort. We're talking about the president.
Oops. When I go into church, I shut this off, but I haven't gotten into the habit of doing it.
Is church at 10:30?
I go to different masses, different times.
But in effect, I'm reading this. In effect, he said that President Trump wanted President Zelensky in a public box by making a public statement about ordering such investigations. In effect, Taylor told Congress that in his understanding, if Ukraine wanted anything out of Trump, including long-desired meeting and much-needed military aid to fend off the Russian invasion, Kiev had to state unequivocally that it would look into the Bidens. That's an abuse. It's clear, Isabel, never mind Manafort, never mind the 2016, but this is a clear abuse of power. So the question isn't that he did it. The question is what you think should be done about it. He did it.
Again, that's his opening statement.
Right.
And the other, he was questioned in private in this impeachment process.
Right.
And the way that this process is now, before I move away to the general process, you say I'm taking my eye off the ball.
Right.
Well,
I guess you are. You're talking about.
You're right. When you say the ball that you want to hit for a home run would be the one to impeach Donald Trump.
No, I'm
using
not.
This phone call with the Ukrainian
not the
president, or this quid pro quo involving the Bidens. That's you have your eye on that ball.
The ball is.
I have my eye on a ball. I think a much bigger ball, and then I see the ball you have your eye on as ancillary.
Okay, so let me this is clear about it. I mean, all the stuff about the Bidens and what the president done. His letter, and the Republicans said it really wasn't. He wasn't threatening.
Taylor's letter.
The phone call with Trump. And then we had the whistleblowers. We had all these pieces come together. All these pieces. The whistleblower, the attorney general. We talked about this. The inspector general. We talked about this last time. It's Trump's phone call where he called it the perfect, right? I mean, perfect phone call or whatever it was, and it was pretty clear that he wanted this investigation. He was holding up the military aid, and then General Taylor yesterday unequivocally said this is what was happening. And not only did he say that, he said they were, because he just came in out of the blue and didn't know what was going on. He was getting mixed messages because there are actually two channels of diplomacy. There was a legitimate channel that we had with the bipartisanship. Here's the $450 million to Ukraine, who's really on the front line of fighting Russia. Ukraine have lost 13,000 men fighting Russia, which obviously President Trump doesn't care about. If he's willing to withhold, it was bipartisan. Meanwhile, you have Giuliani and all that crowd acting his personal lawyer over there in the middle of this diplomacy, which is another whole discussion. What the heck is he doing there anyway? And so Taylor testified yesterday that unequivocally that this is what happened. It was that they were forcing, and it's all in that 15 pages. I mean, it's just clear. It's clear as a bell. You couldn't say it. I don't have the 15 pages here. If I know you were going to question it, I would have brought it. But it's a clear abuse of power where President Trump is forcing Zelensky to go on CNN, of all places, and to say that we're going to investigate the Bidens and the old conspiracy theory that you're talking about, and is going to hold up the military aid. And they did hold it up. Mulvaney held it up. And so that's all I'm asking. When you talk about the eye on the ball, if that's not an abuse of power.
Mulvaney held
up. It was Mulvaney that held up the $450 million in aid way back when. It was just held up for a while, and it was
held
Mulvaney.
up in March, I think.
Yeah, whenever it was.
And then the phone call was in July.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying, I mean, Taylor, it was just.
Taylor went in,
yesterday.
was appointed by Pompeo.
He was appointed by
as what? As ambassador?
Yeah.
He was the
lead
US
person
ambassador.
in Ukraine. He had been ambassador for years and years and years, and
in Ukraine.
In Ukraine. He's the Ukraine expert.
Okay, so he is a former ambassador to
Right.
Ukraine, and then Pompeo appointed him to some other role other than ambassador recently.
Yeah, just recently. He went over there to be the guy. And then
The guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
The guy
I mean, you're
for what?
asking.
I mean, that's important information. He's not the ambassador, so he's
Bill,
being
could you look at exactly what he was? I mean, you're asking these technical questions about.
Well,
he was over there, appointed by him to be, I think, to take over the embassy there. I don't know that.
I'm asking all these technical questions for a reason. And the reason is I see this most recent effort to bring Donald Trump down as, again, another most recent effort. I don't know how many, you've been on this show for how long? I don't know, a year maybe? And it's always, we got him now. Now this time
But
we really got him.
I don't know
okay?
how you, but
First,
what,
and you're
what do
still
you
a
want?
believer in Russian collusion. You
But-
haven't
but
given
no,
that
but-
up since the Mueller report. So I see, you see this as you're
Taylor's
focused.
saying-
This is the ball that you have
But
your
Taylor
eye on.
is saying it, Tom. Why don't you understand it? Why can't,
I understand
and then,
it.
You know what?
So what you've told me so far, I got it, and we're going to get a clarification
Right.
from the
So,
producers
and you know what? You know what?
But let me
know
finish,
what,
please. I have to look at it in context, that this is the latest in an effort that began as soon as he was inaugurated to bring him down, to impeach Trump. And so that's how I see it. And all of the rest of them have fallen apart. There was nothing there. You disagree with that statement.
Right.
I know you still hang on to your thing. But now I am very, very skeptical of this. It is
William
possible. I'm
Of
not
William
saying
Taylor.
that it didn't happen. What Taylor said. Now, who is this Taylor guy? That's
William
one of the
Taylor.
reasons for.
William Taylor.
He's a Vietnam
He's a
vet.
Vietnam
So is
vet.
Mueller. Okay.
He was
Mueller
he
didn't
was a
have
West Point. He's
diddly squat.
He's Pompeo's. I mean, at some point, I know that the what you guys do, what the Republicans do, is you know what Trump tweeted this morning. He called William Taylor radical, unelected bureaucrat. I mean, at some point, now what's going to be interesting?
Possible.
What's going to be interesting is to see what Pompeo says, because Pompeo brought this guy in. Pompeo brought William Taylor.
I heard you.
50 years of impeccable service to our country, West Point, and then you're going to question him.
Well,
it doesn't matter.
That's
So
the way you
doesn't
describe Mueller.
But it's
all
both-
these
they're both true.
impeccable service to our country. And the more I looked into Mueller, the less
Right.
impeccable he
You're
was.
going to find, I'm sure that
I
you
would
and
say
your,
that Mueller was a corrupt official.
Oh, God.
Now,
Oh my God.
Absolutely
Yeah.
would.
And
I've looked into
I'm sure
him.
that once you,
At first,
I'm sure
I
when you
thought,
go on your radical websites,
I want to see.
you're going to find William Taylor is the same thing, another corrupt official. And
We clearly look at different websites.
That's all you go, that's the answer to all these accusations is that people are corrupt.
I see Donald Trump as a flawed individual. Certainly do. There's no individual without any flaws. Donald Trump's are more glaring than most presidents.
Right.
So and yes, he is narcissistic. I think there's plenty of evidence for that. When you say that he has no sense of history, he is weak in history. There are some aspects of history that he should be up on that he's not.
Like
And
pretty much
so,
everything.
No, not everything. But here's what he's good at. He's good at power politics on the international scene. I would say that he is very good at that, and that his experience in New York and elsewhere has prepared him for that. And so I would say that in the area of international trade and diplomacy, he's not very diplomatic. He isn't, okay? Pompeo is much better at it. But Pompeo, he trusts Pompeo, and he listens to him. And Pompeo is a very sharp guy. He might be the sharpest Secretary of State we've had
He
since
certainly
I've
was
been
sharp
watching.
enough to hire William Taylor.
He's very sharp. Number one in his class at West Point, Pompeo was. I don't know where Taylor fit in, but
So you think that cozying up to all the dictators in the world is good foreign policy? You think
I don't agree with that.
You
He
don't.
cozies up to all the dictators in the world. He's had to do business with mafia union bosses in order to get hotels built. Did he cozy up to them? I'm sure he did, up to the point where he got what he wanted to get. And that's how it is in international politics. I mean, you got to deal with scumbags. You got to deal with scumbags.
He doesn't deal with them. He doesn't deal with them. He called Erdogan. I can't remember. I have it here somewhere. This great guy. And so I assume you think it was okay for us to leave the Kurds.
I don't know if you
stranded.
realize that Obama said that he was closest to Erdogan of any international leader while he was the president of the United States. Is that okay with you too? Maybe you didn't know that. So if Trump says that he says, yeah, we had a wonderful conversation. He's a good man. He does this to everybody. He does it to Putin. He does it to the North Korean dictator.
Except that he criticizes the Western leaders.
Which ones?
He's criticized the French president. He's criticized Trudeau. He's criticized Germany's leader.
He does business with them, though, doesn't he? I mean, he's renegotiated various treaties, and they're paying up to their contributions to NATO, which they never did, and he's getting results.
No, he's not getting results. He's not getting results at all. There's nothing he has done. There's literally nothing he's done. You're in a trade war. We're in a trade war with China that's ruining the farm economy. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars to bail out our farmers because of the trade war. There was a new IMF thing out that said that that we're going to be heading into. We've taken off this trade war between the two countries is knocking off like a % of GDP in the world. I mean, we're going to be sliding into a recession. It takes a few years for someone to ruin a country, and Trump is on his way to doing it. And and this idea we're abandoning our allies. You think it was what about the Kurds? You think
what banning?
We're abandoning our allies. Do you think it was the right move to pull out after one phone call with Erdogan to pull out our troops from that border area between Turkey and Syria?
We're jumping around a lot, but I'd say that that was handled badly.
Oh, it was handled badly. You think it was even if it was handled better, do you think it was a good idea to do that?
I'm not saying it was a bad idea to do it.
Really?
The timing of it and the way he handled it, without consulting his military guys,
right.
Ahead of time, without any warning to the Kurds about what he was doing, and seemingly after a telephone call to Erdogan, it looks like that was the sequence of events that over just a few days led to this, and then the Turks went in and bombed. Erdogan is a scumbag. I see Erdogan
it's a tough one.
is a dangerous character. He had formerly been allied with Israel, and then he switched. Erdogan sees himself as the new caliph. After ISIS was defeated, ISIS called itself a caliphate. The last caliphate that existed was in 1922, I think it collapsed, and it was the Ottoman Empire, and it was the head of the Turkish government. And now there hasn't been a caliphate for 100 years. There had been one for 1,300 years prior to that. And so he sees himself as the head of the Muslim world, Sunni and Shiite. He's a Sunni. In order to unite Sunni and Shiite, who've been at his toes for 1,400 years, he wants to demonize Israel. So he's switched that. He's now the opponent of Israel, and he's supporting Hamas, which is Sunni, in the Gaza Strip, and he's supporting Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, which is Shiite. And he is uniting them, and that's his long game. That's Erdogan's long game. Do I think Trump understands that? I know people in his administration do. I know John Bolton did. I'm curious about what happened between him and Bolton.
Well,
because that concerns me.
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course it does. That's just another.
I do. So I don't know. Now Trump has been since he won. He's been under enormous pressure, and he very much is the victim of a conspiracy. You think there's nothing to that, and that I think is the fundamental difference in the way we look at this situation.
Who's the victim of conspiracy?
Donald Trump.
You mean in the way that, look, there's always, there's always that. Remember, didn't the Clintons say the same thing, the right-wing conspiracy?
Hillary did.
Yeah, of course.
On Today's Show.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So both parties are going to say there's a conspiracy. It certainly started the same thing you said, the first day of the Trump administration, they've been wanting to impeach him. Well, guess what? I can't remember if it was Lindsey Graham or one of those guys, the first day of the Obama administration, we're going to oppose everything he did. I mean, everything he's going to do.
Isn't that what the opposition party does?
So they do that. So I'm saying that. So this whole idea of conspiracy theories is that they go on both sides. So you have to look at what actually happens on the ground. So I'm asking you, you're saying that Trump is this great international leader. Do you think it was good that we abandoned the Kurds who fought with us for a decade? He fought with us in the Iraq War and fought with us against ISIS. And now who comes in? The Russians, the Syrians. Now there's a land bridge for Iran to go to Israel. You can go boop, 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 right through. There's nobody blocking the Iranians now.
I don't agree that this was a smart move. But what did he do?
You don't agree it was a smart move? You don't?
Not based on what I've seen so far.
Okay.
I've read it. Here are the analyses I've read in support of what Trump did. And that is, there are at least four different factions of Kurds that are in Turkey, and in Syria, in Iraq, and in Iran, because the old Kurdistan straddles all four of those nations. And so they're minorities, but yet they have an ethnic unification. But the way they have evolved in the 100 years, again, when the collapse of the Ottoman Empire took place, England and France divided up and created all these borders in the Sykes-Picot Treaty following World War I. And so the Kurds were disenfranchised. They weren't given a nation state, which has maybe been a mistake, but maybe not have been. I don't know. I mean, it's just, we'll see. But it's in the 100 years, those Kurds, Iranian Kurds, Iraqi Kurds, Syrian Kurds, Turkish Kurds, have all sort of been different because they have different. In order to survive, they have to deal differently with their nation states. So when you say the Kurds, you're talking about a lot of different Kurds. And so the ones that are in Syria who helped us against ISIS are not the same as the ones in Iraq who helped us in the Iraq War and took Mosul and so forth and so on. So that's as much as I know about Kurdistan or the Kurds. So what I've learned enough to know that there's more for me to learn about Kurds, the Kurds. But when we hear media reports, especially in regard to what Trump just did, we hear the Kurds and they are our allies. Well, yeah, they have been. But because they love us and they want to, kiss the flag and all that, or because it's in their interest to try and get a homeland, to side with the big kid on the block in the United States, and plus we had common enemies in certain
Yeah,
places.
of course.
So Kurds, do they have permanent friends, or they have permanent interests, which is something that is a political kind of rule. And does the United States have permanent friends or permanent interests? And if you look at it from that context, we needed to.
I don't understand what you're saying.
The Kurds are permanent friends. Yes, they've helped us in Iraq, and they've helped us against ISIS and in other places. They are permanent friends that we should never abandon, and maybe not. I mean, is it in our interest to be friends with them beyond a certain point? Was it in our interest to be allies with Joe Stalin once the Nazis were defeated? Probably not.
I don't even understand what you're saying. Was it a good idea to get? Was it a good idea to? Was it a good idea to abandon the Kurds or not?
I believe I answered that question.
No. Well, oh, no, you didn't. I'm sorry. Just say yes or no. Is it a good idea to abandon the Kurds?
I'm not going to answer it yes or
then
no, because you're trying to
answer.
oversimplify the situation.
It's
I was trying to say,
simple.
these are the analyses that I read in support of Trump. What's my particular view?
Right.
Is I don't know yet.
Right.
I'm waiting to learn more about just how this plays out. It seems there's a ceasefire, but it's a tentative one, and it would have ended. There's a lot here. I'm watching it. I've watched this region pretty closely. I'm trying to understand a very complicated region. I'm not sure you have.
One thing I've learned about you.
Need to understand this.
One thing I've learned about your debating style is that when something that you know is wrong, your defense is that I'm going to look at it more, and you're going to try to analyze it because you don't quite understand it yet. That's the way you do it.
What's wrong with that?
Well, it's because on the other side, when it's something that's it's politically favorable to you, you know it. It's a conspiracy. It's this. It's that. I mean, the Kurds, the quote was, which you alluded to, is that, right, somebody in Britain said once, there are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies, there are only permanent interests.
Yes.
So clearly, we only have permanent interests, and it was in our interest. We've been a buffer to many toxic military situations, Korea being number one, for generations in different parts of the world. So our 1,500 guys there, were in those special forces. It's a
50.
total 50.
50.
No,
that's how many people he took out that were in this area.
I've seen convoys that are coming out, and the Kurds are throwing rocks at them, at our Americans.
I understood there were 50 guys there.
No, there's 1,500 guys there. Now, first of
all,
some
of them were moved.
First of all, that was one of the things that Trump said when he announced it, that we had no troops in Syria. So he said that. He said we had no troops.
When?
Just within a couple weeks ago.
No troops in Syria.
Yeah, he said that.
But that was right when he was withdrawing.
Yeah.
From
first he said
the
that.
border,
That was part of his
20-mile buffer zone.
Yeah, he just said it. I mean, I've seen the clips many times. They play it on liberal
I didn't
TV.
happen to see that, but if he said it, that wasn't.
It was wrong.
That wasn't true, because you still have them there.
Yeah. But we're pulling out. The Turks have moved
into
in.
northern Iraq.
Yeah, the Turks have moved in, and there you go. So it's obviously the hoodlum. I mean, really, it's always been a mess. But since we had the invasion of Iraq, when we totally blew up the Middle East,
the 2003 invasion.
The 2003, it's been a mess, and it's obviously a mess there. And so our 1,500 troops, we've leveraged the Kurds with our special forces fighting the ISIS for the last 5 or 6 years, and Trump has announced, right, it was sort of like the Bush's announcement that we won the Iraq war on that battleship back then. He's announced that ISIS is defeated, and they're not. There's estimates there are 10 to 20,000 ISIS people over there, hiding around and doing all this stuff, some of which are in
Kurdish
camps,
yes.
Camps, which they've admitted, the administration admitted like a little more than 100 have got out, whatever that means. So it's a dangerous situation. Are we going to be there? Would we be there forever? Who knows? But we've never approached it like, we don't say that we're going to be in Korea forever, South Korea forever. But
my whole lifetime.
I know, but you're not saying we should pull out because we've never promised to be there forever. I mean, Trump says, well, we never promised to be in northern Syria forever. No, we didn't promise, but it served our interest to be there. We were a buffer between Turkey, as you described, is no friend of Israel. We're keeping the Russians at bay. We're keeping Assad in Syria at bay. We're keeping the Iranians at bay. And plus, we committed to them. I mean, doesn't our word mean anything anymore?
We committed to them. We fought with them.
Yeah,
they fought with
them.
us.
Yeah.
And that's a bonding that takes
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
But we committed to them. What is
Well,
our commitment?
I
Do we
should
have a
say
treaty
is that,
commitment with
no,
them?
What I'm saying is that we have been, and I know you're trying to slip me up by saying we have a treaty or something, but we've been committed to them for the last 10 years to fight ISIS, and we just pulled the switch over one phone call and abandoned them. Now, it didn't have to be a treaty to do that.
I'm not trying to trip you up. What I'm
And-
trying
and-
to
and
do
the other-
is,
and
I take a
last point.
broader view than you take. But go ahead.
I'll
make
take a
your
lot
last
of point.
point.
And then the last point is that everybody has criticized us. Republicans, Lindsey Graham, this move out of, the House took a big vote. This moving out of the withdrawing those troops has been widely criticized by Republicans and Democrats. And
Most of that criticism from the Republican side seems to be how he did it,
okay.
not so much what he did,
No, I don't.
but
believe
how
that.
he did. Now, some both, and maybe even the majority both. But
Okay.
at least on the Republican former allies, or who would be perceived as allies of Donald Trump, in most things, have, as you said, been against what he did and
Okay,
have criticized what
Yeah.
he did. I can see that. It's true. It's obvious.
All right. So, I mean, I realize that when you say I don't take the broader view, I mean, you're not going to know anything ever more than I'll ever know about this. And at some point, you have to weigh. So you have to weigh what you hear in the media. You have to weigh what people. You have to weigh what the politicians are saying, including members of your own party. And I think it's pretty clear this was just a terrible thing to do.
I think the difference is that I do look at the world situation, especially that region, and that region is, I've tried to make it my business to understand it. And it's one of those regions where the more you understand about it, the more you realize how much you don't understand. And there are so many different ethnicities, religions, economic interests, and that, and going back millennia, that tribal differences, wars, peace treaties, and then that it's hard to keep up. And then this is a dynamic situation as well. And so, I do. I watch it and I try to understand it. If you said, that, what did you say? I'm not avoiding the question. I look at Donald Trump. He's the president of the United States right now. It happens to be a president whose foreign policy and domestic policy I agree with and I like. The man is a different story. I look at the people who want to unseat him in 2020. I look at them. I looked at them in the same context, and I say, okay, it looks like Trump's going to have my vote again. If any of these people become the nominee, in spite of all of this.
Yeah. Okay.
I also see that I think you look at this in terms of Trump. The things that you brought up so far today are aimed at, we want Trump gone because of what happened in Ukraine, because of what happened on the border with Turkey, whatever it is. That is your focus. How can we make Trump into being incompetent? Whatever it is.
You're mischaracterizing it. You're mischaracterizing.
That's not your motive.
No.
Okay.
I mean, my motive is to Trump not be president. My motive, no matter who I support in any local or national election, my motive at some point is to have this person over this person. So yeah, it's an obvious statement that I do not want Trump to be president. Now, I didn't agree with the impeachment thing, carrying on with the impeachment until recently. And I think at some point, though, it's not just politics as usual. I mean, all this business with Ukraine is a clear abuse of power. The emoluments, he's violating the emoluments clause in the Constitution, clear as a bell. And then what about the obstruction of justice, where he won't cooperate with this investigation. So anybody, for the Ukraine investigation, they have to subpoena these people to come in. He refuses to allow his staff to testify. Right? He said it right at the beginning. So
I think he has good constitutional reason for that.
No, he doesn't. The Congress has, the House, the Congress has, that's why we have a separation of powers. Hillary Clinton showed up, Bill Clinton showed up, everybody has showed up. So he's really undermining the very fabric of our institution, even on that level. And so that's why I think at this point, there's no other choice but to impeach him.
Okay, well, I don't agree with that at all.
Well, I get three areas.
The way I see it as, they've been wanting to impeach Trump since day one.
You're just not looking at the evidence, though. That's the thing. I mean, you're going into your political spin about they wanted to impeach it, and this is more. And
what was Richard Nixon impeached? He wasn't impeached, but he would have been. Why did impeachment proceedings begin against him? What was his crime?
Well, eventually it was the cover-up.
What was the original crime?
Well, it was the break-in. The original crime.
What were they breaking in to get?
The political
information on their political opponents. Larry O'Brien's office was broken into. He was head of the DNC. And so they hired the plumbers, former CIA agents, to go in and get dirt on Larry O'Brien and DNC to use in the upcoming election. Right?
Yeah. So what's the point?
That's what he did. And so then...
But what's the point?
The point is, they were after information for political purposes. So is that what Trump is after in Ukraine? Maybe.
Yeah.
Is that what John Brennan and Andrew Comey and Loretta Lynch were trying to get on Trump while he was running and while they were in office? Is that what they were trying to get?
I don't know that. I mean, I don't know that. We could debate that. But guess what, Tom?
I know that.
Those people are not the President of the United States. President Nixon eventually would have been impeached if he hadn't resigned. And so we're talking about President Trump. I mean, we can talk about Loretta and all those guys, and we can go back and forth, and you listen to your shows and I listen to my shows, and and we're not going to solve it. But the fact is, we're not talking about them. We're talking about
understanding
Trump.
The dynamics of the situation. That is what I'm trying to do. Understand what is going on under my nose here, and all of these news reports, and seeing them in this larger context. I don't know what happened to my voice all of a sudden, but it's
just read William Taylor's 15-page opening statement, and it was clear to him. I mean, he just said it. I mean, this is what was happening. It was a play-to-pay thing where I'm not going to repeat the whole thing.
I want to continue with the thread that I opened up with Watergate. So there was a vote to open an impeachment inquiry in the House, and it went to the Judiciary Committee. In Andrew Johnson, in the 1860s, there was a vote of the House to initiate impeachment. For William Clinton, there was a vote in the House to initiate impeachment proceedings. And in all three of those procedures, there was an open inquiry. Not this one. One, there was no vote to open it. And two, it's a closed inquiry, controlled completely by Democrats. They did release this opening statement, I guess, as what you say is true, but then the rest of it was in secret. And this is orchestrated by Nancy Pelosi to not have a vote so she could be in complete control of the flow of information about how this inquiry is proceeding. And they do it in secret, and then we hear about what the testimony was, but we hear about it only if Adam, what's his name, wants to release stuff. Now,
the Republicans sit on those committees.
And evidently they haven't been releasing stuff.
Why not?
Because Democrats do that. Republicans tend not to.
No, Republicans don't want this stuff to be released.
Andrew...
If there was something that was good about Trump, they would release it.
You think so?
And
last time, when that committee that now Schiff is let's see, no, that was in oversight. It was what's his name? Devin Nunes. He was in the majority. He was chairman. I believe it was oversight. That he was then accused of going to Trump with some information, and he was referred to with an ethics complaint, which basically pulled the rug out from under him. He couldn't function for about 10 months until the ethics was investigated, and then he was absolved. There was no ethics complaint. But it was clearly a maneuver to just pull the rug out from under him because he was getting too close to this conspiracy that you don't think exists, but which I know exists.
It's just amazing that all this stuff has existed when
But
the
now-
Republicans have
now-
controlled all until last year.
Republicans are not interested. They saw what the Democrats did to Nunes and there wasn't even any grounds for it. So if they were to leak information, then they could be brought up on charges. Republicans are the only ones brought up on charges when they do stuff like this.
What?
Democrats are not. And we know that Andrew Comey released, and he leaked stuff. We know Andrew McCabe leaked stuff. They've been caught, and they've been caught lying about it under oath. And so what happens to them? Nothing.
What's amazing to me is that Trump refused to cooperate with this investigation.
He doesn't have to constitutionally
No, he
cooperate
does.
with this investigation. He sent a letter to Nancy Pelosi. Cuccinelli, his attorney, spelled it all out. Did you read that letter?
Yeah,
I did.
But the Congress, it's the three equal branches of government, and Congress has a right to investigate. They do. It's in the
They
Constitution.
do have a right to investigate
Yeah,
if
and
they follow certain procedures, which they're not following.
He said right at
And
the,
they don't
he
allow
said-
due
he
process
said-
rights
he
to
said-
Donald
He
Trump.
said right out of the gate, they're not going to cooperate. The White House said right out of the gate, they're not
Exactly.
going to cooperate.
For these
And the other-
reasons.
what's
The
amazing
reasons
to
I just
me-
spelled out to you.
What's amazing to me is that, except I guess we had the election, the House went to the Republicans last year, but all the stuff has happened. You complain about these conspiracies, you complain about these un-Americans, the Comeys, all these people have had stellar records, but apparently they don't now.
Stellar records.
Yeah, Comey, Mueller, all these people, and I'm sure and next time we're on, you're going to dig up some dirt on William Taylor, I'm sure, because he doesn't agree with you, because it doesn't fit your perspective. But the Republicans have been in charge of everything. They've had they had three houses for 2 years. That's what's amazing to me. And then but it's always about the conspiracy. Anyway, can we change subjects a little bit here, or do you want to?
You say, what did you just say?
Well, the Republicans had control when he was elected. They had the House, they had the Senate, and they had the executive branch. And you guys still complain.
We'll
still
see.
complain.
We'll see. I hope that the Durham. Okay, so the IG Horowitz's report came out last Friday, but it hasn't been released publicly. It came out. Comey has read it now. Brennan has read it. Clapper has read it because they're all in it. So that's how they do it. IG. But the IG, he has no power to force anybody to testify. Only if they're current employees. The past employees, like Brennan and Comey and so forth, he can't force their testimony. He can't interview them if they don't want to be interviewed. So this report is going to come out. He did recommend that Comey be indicted, even in his last report, same guy, Horowitz. But then Barr said, nope, we're not going to indict him. So Comey has a stellar record, you think. Well, I don't know what, you say, I look at my sites, you look at your sites. Evidently that's very true. I look at your sites and I look at my sites, but you look at only your own. I don't think you.
How do you know
I
that?
spring stuff on you because the stuff that I've asked you about,
It's
that's very common, but you never heard about it because you don't look at these sites.
I don't look at a
can
lot
give
of
you
those
some other
sites.
examples.
I don't look at a lot of those sites. They're conspiracy sites.
Did you know? You know what Fusion GPS is, right?
No, I don't.
Fusion GPS hired Christopher Steele.
Oh, we're
to
going to
come
go back
up
to
with
the
the dossier.
Let's not. Can we
No,
not go there?
I'm going to a different place here.
All right.
Did you know that Fusion GPS was hired by Planned Parenthood also? They were hired by Planned Parenthood to go after David Daleiden. Do you know who he is? He's been on trial in California. He's the one who followed Planned Parenthood doctors around and asked them questions about how they do abortions and are they selling body parts from aborted babies. Remember that? Remember that conspiracy?
Yeah.
Okay. It was.
They didn't sell body parts. I mean, they sold them, but it wasn't like how it was portrayed. But go ahead.
They said, Hillary said, and this came up in the 2016 debates between Hillary and Trump.
Right.
And he said basically what I just said. And Hillary said, no, they're not. Those videos were edited. And that's what the New York Times reported, the Washington Post reported, all the media sources that you look into, that's what they reported. Do you remember that? These were edited tapes. These were not real. David Daleiden edited them. Kamala Harris was AG in California at the time. Fusion GPS was hired by Planned Parenthood, major funder for Kamala Harris in all of her campaigns. Kamala Harris goes in and files charges against David Daleiden. He's the one who came up with all these videos. And she confiscated them. Used a law never used against anybody else, any journalist in California who uses tactics like Mike Wallace used to use on 60 Minutes and secretly record testimony by people. No one had ever been commonly used by investigative reporters. David Daleiden was charged, both criminally and civilly. He was charged
it wasn't
criminally
common.
in California.
It's against the law, by the way. It's not common. Mike Wallace never did that. It's against the law. We can't record people. We can't record
In
private...
certain circumstances, you can. In public places, and if it's evidence of a crime being committed, you can.
Mike
According
Wallace
to the California statutes.
Okay.
So she prosecuted him. So he is still, and then other Planned Parenthood affiliates filed suit in various other states, including Texas and a few others that I can't remember. And so civil trials have been going on in all these places. So he's being defended. Anyway, there's been testimony in his trials. Very, very interesting testimony. I only know of about 2 websites that covered this. And you obviously didn't hear about it. So it's also, they were never edited. These videos were never edited. And one of these sites went to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Charges that he was distributing edited tapes to besmirch Planned Parenthood. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that they were not edited, that they were genuine. They are, I mean, they were edited because, you know, he had 20 hours of stuff.
What's the point of all this, Tom?
The point of all this is that your sites do not cover major stories that are going on. And you don't think this is even a major story, do you?
It's not a major story compared to what's going on in the White House.
It's all related because Fusion GPS is involved, and you don't know who Fusion GPS is.
Now that you mention
so
it,
you
I
don't.
did. Now that you mention it, I did it. But you know, I realize it's hard to. I realize that your basis is to find those websites that fit your perspective, and that's the way it's always been, and that's fine. That's okay. You know, I mean, I don't look at those conspiracy. I don't look at I look at Drudge Report. I look at a lot of conservative type websites because I'm just interested in the news. But a lot of that stuff. You know, because you always can find something on the other side. I could find information that rebuts everything you say if I really wanted to take the time, because I know how it works. You're finding a thread, you're putting all these pieces together, and you can make a good case. And I could make a good case that Castro killed Kennedy too if you gave me 10 minutes. I mean, it's just the way it works. You know, but when you have to look at, but we also live in a mainstream world, and so you know,
a mainstream media world.
Yeah, but we live in there's different levels of this. You can go way, 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 way down to all that level and find things that fit your perspective, and that's great. And maybe they're true, maybe they're not true, but I could find just as much information. I can't rebut that stuff because I don't go into the weeds about that Planned Parenthood thing. I remember generally about it, but I bet if you assign me to it, I'll find out and I can rebut everything you say. On the left wing, on the liberal things, but then you look at the broad. Then you look at the broad things like Shepard Smith. You know, there'll be a big blockbuster thing with Mulvaney on, and I'll be looking around and watching CNN, and then I'll go to Fox News, and they don't even cover it. They literally don't even cover it. And Shepard Smith resigned. He's like one of the 2. He and Chris Wallace and Brett, what's his name? Like they're the only news guys on Fox, and he resigned. I mean, what does that tell you about the perspective of Fox? I realize that MSNBC's liberal, but, you know, it just gives you a sense. I mean, people with integrity like Shepard Smith resigned because of the infighting between the personalities and the news department on Fox. And it's just an indication.
So he has integrity, but the others with whom he was fighting do not.
Not in terms of being news people.
Okay, so
Shepard
Tucker
Smith,
Carlson he was fighting with, I read in one
Hannity
report.
and all of them.
He's not a news guy.
No.
Tucker Carlson.
Right.
He's a columnist. You know, he's an opinion guy.
Yeah.
We got 5 minutes left?
Yeah, hey, I want you to do your second.
Which candidates do you think gave the strongest and weakest performances in the most recent Democrat candidates debate? I would say Buttigieg gave a strong performance. Biden gave the weakest performance. Biden, I think he's going to continue to circle the drain. I don't see that he can recover because there'll be more of these debates in which he'll demonstrate. I don't know if he's always been this way. I know he's never been the brightest guy, but he doesn't seem to have command of basic things. He can't pronounce words right. He forgets what he's talking about. He loses the thread. He can't pick it up again. He looks like the early dementia is happening with him. And Bernie Sanders is doing better, even following his heart attack. Let's see. And those are the best. That would be my analysis. I didn't watch all of them. Maybe some others gave a better performance that I didn't happen to see. I don't always agree with the media analysis of who did real well and who didn't do well unless I watch it myself, but I didn't in this case. So, what's your take?
Well, I think, in terms of who did, because that one, I didn't watch the first two. I turned it off after 10 minutes. It just seemed like they really are difficult to watch, particularly with the format. It's like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I watched a couple hours of this one, and I thought Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg did really well. They just, and Klobuchar, she's the Midwestern regular person, right? So she just came off surprisingly strong. I agree. I don't think he has dementia. I think Biden's always been Biden. And he's not, whatever it is in life, that some people are real leaders and some people aren't. And he's been vice president and he's lost a couple of presidential elections, Biden. So I don't think it'll be well served. I don't think Democrats will be well served if he is the nominee. At the same time, I think what's interesting about it is that it's not only, and I don't recall exactly, it seemed like in the Republican primary of 2016, it seemed as though everybody was just pushing to the right. It didn't seem like I don't remember this exactly, maybe you do, but it didn't seem like there were moderates. We had Jeb Bush. There were some moderates on there. So there was the moderates, and then there's the extreme right with Ted Cruz and Trump and all that. And of course, Jeb Bush got pushed out early, and who else was the moderate on there? I don't recall. So like any primary on either side, you have the moderates and you have the extreme, and in primaries we know there's a tendency to push to the extreme because it's a primary. You're going after your own people. So I think what's interesting about the Democrats this time, it's not just that that's taking place, but it's generational. It's generational. So, it's either Warren, these guys are all in their 70s. It's Warren and Biden and Bernie, and then you get the young guys.
So there's Buttigieg. There's what's her name?
There's
Tulsi Gabbard.
Klobuchar. And
she's young. All right, yeah.
She's way young.
Really?
Who? Oh, no, Klobuchar?
Klobuchar.
No, she's like late 50s. There's Booker, whatever he is, in his 50s. Yeah. There's Harris, who's probably in her 50s. And then there's, maybe there's not a huge difference between 60 and 70. I guess we're going to know. But, but it does seem as though it's a generational thing. So we'll see.
Did you hear anything about 2,200 babies that were found from the abortion clinic in South Bend, Buttigieg's city? No, interesting. There was an abortionist practiced in South Bend for decades, and he was a Nazi sympathizer. He was a Hitler follower. He was raised in Dresden as a kid when it was firebombed. He was pissed at the United States, and he said, "I'm killing babies because I wanted to get back at Americans for what they did to Dresden."
Wow.
1 minute left. Now, you didn't even hear about that, did you?
No.
See, there it is. Now, I see websites that, I think that's important. Buttigieg never mentioned it. Finally, he did. After about a month. They were found in September, early September. And then they found some more in the trunk of his car. After the guy died, he died. So his family was looking at his stuff and so forth. And then I just only
And
last
why
week
wouldn't the
heard
liberal
about
media, why wouldn't, the guy seems like
it's about abortion.
No, but he's a crazy Nazi sympathizer nut. Why would the liberals want to protect that? Him.
Because Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood, was a Nazi sympathizer as well. She liked Hitler's eugenics project. She thought it was wonderful. She's an iconic feminist.
No,
They're
we
not
got-
going to want to reflect
we-
any on that Nazism of Margaret Sanger.
I mean, we got the America First with Trump. I mean, that's that.
You asked me a question, I answered it.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Wrap it up, Tom.
all right. Well, I think some of our differences and have come out here, and our perspectives, our basic perspectives, based on we have a worldview. You have yours, I have mine, and I cite things that bolster mine. You cite things that bolster yours, and then hopefully by just having our discussions, we bring out many aspects of the issues that are facing us. Right? That's the purpose of. That's why I come here.
Good. Well, thank you very much.
I hope you come back in another month,
Okay.
and we'll do it again. There'll be another set of issues. And in 2 weeks, we'll have Jim Wilfong back and do the same thing. Thank you, folks. See you then.